Books make you hope. Books make you dream. Books make you laugh. Books make you scream. This is the Books That Make You show, discussing books with authors and experts, unraveling the inner pages of all the books that help make us who we are.
Welcome to the Books That Make You show. I'm your host, Desiree Duffy, and we're talking about books that make you elevate your mind and body with the revolutionary approach of Dr. Paul E. Corona, MD. Meet Dr. Paul Corona. He is a Southern California-based physician who is reshaping the future of psychiatry and family medicine. Over 30 years of medical experience, Dr. Corona is not your typical physician. Starting his career in family medicine, he has seamlessly transitioned into psychiatry, ultimately pioneering an approach that he calls mind and body healing. He's authored 3 books in his Mind and Body Healing series, and his latest book, The Corona Protocol. In it, he unlocks revolutionary insights into the treatment of mental health, challenging conventional methods that have been a little bit stagnant, shall we say, for decades. Are you tired of that, one-size-fits-all health solution approaches that a lot of physicians seem to dole out nowadays? Well, Dr. Corona offers an unconventional yet tried and true approach to psychiatry. And this includes off-label use of medications, combined treatment methods, and aggressive strategies that apparently are getting results. Above all, he believes that mental health treatment is not about quick fixes, but a carefully calibrated balance that leads to holistic healing. Dr. Corona, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Desiree. Great to be on.
All right. So the Corona Protocol, what makes your treatment revolutionary in the realm of psychiatry? Give us the lowdown.
Well, basically, as you said in the opening, I started in family medicine. Never really thought I would do psychiatry full time, but I was always interested in it during training and during residency training and early in practice. But it's when new medications started coming out, new antidepressants started coming out, and I started to explore a bit as far as, is doing things in a slightly different way, because I started understanding that some of these new medications were not only helping my patients with their emotional health, but also their physical health. And this was during the 1990s when I started. And I think what changed, what was different than other approaches, is that I was really focusing on the physical aspects, being a family doctor. Whereas I think in psychiatry, normally the focus is on the emotional, not the physical. So during the 90s, I started doing so much of this and trying things and trying this and that, and on a lot of different people, that I really developed a protocol that I really realized was different than the other protocols I was seeing in books, in journals. I wasn't seeing the same approach. I wasn't seeing the same mindset I had with other doctors.
Now, can we talk about mind-body medicine? How does this approach offer more of a holistic treatment model?
Well, it's holistic in the sense that the medications, which we term psychotropic medications, which sounds scary to people because, psychotropic, and people don't really, think about mood related to chemistry. But the holistic, in my view, means helping the body to heal itself. And that's exactly what these medications do, is they help to rebalance a person's neurochemistry that goes out of whack for reasons that the person has no control over. So what medications are doing is really kind of resetting things into and basically forcing these chemicals that are going out of balance to go back into balance. And that creates this sense of well-being, this sense of self. And, the goal of all my patients is to get them feeling their best and get them feeling like themselves again. And that's what really holistic it means, is that that self, that feeling of patients are saying to me, I haven't felt this in years, or some of them are saying, I don't know if I've really ever felt like this as long as I can remember, because I've felt this way since childhood. And so it's really exciting for me when I see these transformations occurring, and again, explaining to people that that the typical holistic approach, whether it be with herbs and supplements and vitamins, those kind of things can help a bit, but it's not nearly as powerful as this method and this protocol.
That has got to be so fulfilling when you hear people talk about how they feel and how different it is. Like you said, they haven't felt this way in years, or they've never felt this good. It's like all of a sudden they realize, so this is what normal feels like.
Right.
That's got to give you a great feeling as their doctor. How does that impact you inside?
Well, it's I went into medicine because I really wanted to help people, and I really loved being a family doctor and all the aspects of that. But I really started realizing that I could make a bigger difference in people's lives by doing this, and especially as I was learning in the 1990s about my different approach, and realizing that it was a very different approach from what I was seeing. That I knew that at the time that I could make a bigger difference doing this versus being a family doctor. And so this is why about the year 2000 or so is when I made a transition, and I've seen countless, thousands and thousands of transformations, and basically it's a fairly simple approach of how to do this, and I think that a lot of people are frustrated with normal treatment strategies that they maybe have gone through, and they get partial results, and the doctor just doesn't really know what to do after that, and so they're kind of left in this kind of yeah, it's a little bit better, but I'm not feeling great, and at that point the doctors so often they're like, okay, well, you're better, that's it then, and so a lot of them never really feel this complete transformation, from the use of a combination typically of different medications together, which is what leads to what I term the Corona protocol.
And I do want to talk about more about the actual protocol and some of the methodologies that you're using. Let's jump over and talk more specifically, though, about the book, because you share stories in your book. You're really pouring so much of this knowledge that you're talking about into this book. Can you talk about putting these stories and creating this? I mean, you've written books before, but this one feels and reads differently. It really is your opus. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and I think I've been writing for over 20 years now, and I think my first three books took me 12 years to complete, and it's really more about the science. There's a couple stories here and there in those books, but not but more basic, basically focusing on the science and explaining mood disorders. And then I wrote two books that aren't out yet, which are intended to be training manuals for prescribers. That's my next thing I want to do after this book is to get those other two books launched. This book I really wanted to be different because of the fact that I wanted to start telling stories. I'm a book geek in a sense because I've read hundreds of books, and I love fiction. And my favorite reading is fiction, and so I've always loved reading stories. And when I started getting the concept of this book, probably about like 5 years ago, was when I first started. I wanted to be a book about people, and specifically about specific cases, and using all the patients I've seen over the years into these stories. I mean, again, all the stories aren't each based on sometimes one real person, but maybe a combination of people. But I basically thought that a storytelling book would be really fun to read, and that's what I want for the readers, is to make it fun, make it interactive, and to realize how I go about treating each case. And so each story basically I introduce the patient, the history, and then I go through the treatment throughout the case. So I'm showing people how the Corona protocol actually works in real life.
And these narratives definitely work. And you're touching on problems and situations and issues that individuals face, as well as societal situations. And you're also bringing in the macro to the micro, which is something I really appreciate. A lot of times we don't draw those correlations. For example, a school shooting, well, that's a big issue we have in our society, but then there's individuals and humans, and there's more going on, and you're really looking at the core and what are driving some of these issues. Do you want to talk about the concept of kind of taking the big things and shining this lens on them to find ways like you do and helping people discover not only the individual things that can help them, but then how that can help society as a whole?
Right, and that's where what came to the subtitle of the book, which talked about addiction, bullying, homelessness, school shootings, and suicide. So that's kind of what the book leads to is I'm trying to explain, like, why do all these things happen in our society? What's going on? Why is everything getting worse, not better? So I opened the book, the first three sections, really talking about more basics: depression, anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder, eating disorders, etc. And I also delve into personality disorders like narcissists and sociopaths, and because I need to kind of address the basics before I start getting into the meat, the stuff that I just said, and so trying to explain why are we in this position we're in. Well, there's a few reasons again, but a big reason has to do with lack of focus on mental health. And I think there's so many people out there who are suffering with these things, including school shooters or mass shooters, where they have severe mental illness that's really never been addressed. And so I think if we can treat people earlier on and identify people who have mental health issues, we can really help society by reducing these very severe problems that we're seeing.
And people are very much aware that there is a mental health crisis, that people, we all feel it to a certain degree, or we know somebody in our lives that are experiencing something: anxiety, depression, stress, bipolar disorder. We might know somebody who's a narcissist, or we think they're a narcissist. And, heaven forbid, we know somebody who has been affected by something like a school shooting or some kind of a terrible, awful situation. And I have to be careful and choose my words carefully because of some of the programming that we're on. But all of those things are impacting us in real ways. And one of the things that you do is, and I'm going to lean over into the controversy, because you're saying in a lot of ways, and I'll let you put it into your words because I do not want to put words into your mouth, but you're leaning into some controversy on off-label use of medications to help address these issues. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, and off-label, means, well, basically what it means is that using a medication for an indication that it wasn't originally supposed to be used for. And the most common example would be an antidepressant. So there's a lot of antidepressants that I use for, number one, probably anxiety disorders. And so that's an off-label use, but that's been something I've done for 30 years now. So, to me, off-label really just means cutting edge, using medications in a ways that they weren't originally intended for, but that what we find out over time that they work really well for. And so I think if a doctor is not prescribing off-label, they're not doing the best for their patients. And so, is it controversial? Not really in this field so much, because I think most doctors out there understand in pretty much most fields of medicine that there's off-label ways of doing things that are better than the what things are indicated for. So I don't think it's too controversial in the medical field. It might be for some doctors, but I think it sounds controversial, I think, possibly for the reader, because people think like, oh, you're going against what. Well, again, you're going against basically what the government wants it to be used for, because I think pharmaceutical companies have to get FDA approval, and to do that they have to be very specific about what they're marketing the medication for. And so that's why I think a lot of doctors don't really hear about these off-label benefits, because if they just go by what the drug company says, and the drug company is very limited what they can say, because they can't say anything about off-label use, they get in big trouble. So sometimes doctors just never really hear about these off-label uses, and that's one of the reasons I've written this book. And the reason I want to train doctors is that to explain all this, and I think to teach doctors about all the different exciting ways that we can treat patients.
What are your beliefs? Can you talk a little bit about your beliefs of the traditional psychiatric model? What do you think should change there?
Well, again, it's, having read psychiatric textbooks over the years, nothing really ever changes. I mean, so when I say I mentioned that things are kind of a bit stale in a sense, because recommendations just stay the same. Probably a classic example. Everyone's heard of SSRIs like Zoloft, Prozac, Lexapro. So the number one rule in psychiatry is that's the first line medication for everybody. Everybody gets an SSRI to start. Sometimes they help, but a lot of times they don't, or they cause side effects. And so the problem is, some people say, I feel better, my anxiety is better, but I feel numb. I feel apathetic. I have sexual side effects. I'm tired. So a lot of people don't realize, and doctors don't realize that, that's probably an indication that you either switch to something better or add something to take care of the other issues. And that's where the combining of medications comes in. But I think, I question the whole notion that SSRIs are the best first-line medications, because they aren't. The other rule of thumb in psychiatry is that, everything takes 4 to 6 to 8 weeks to work. That's complete nonsense. That's just never been true. But that's kind of accepted as modern medicine in this field. So those are just two small examples. I could go on and on with other examples. But basically, there's just, and also a big one too is lack of getting people completely better. We call it remission. Remission means getting that patient to what I said earlier, that old self feeling, that best self, that's my goal with every patient, is to get them to that state. And most doctors don't think that way. They think, oh, you're better. Okay. Are you doing great? No. Okay. Well, you're doing better. So, and then they stop there. They don't keep exploring and trying things. And it does take typically most of my patients are on a combination of medications, not just one, but they're happy with the results, and I get them to the point where they don't really care how many things they have to be on, as long as they can feel the way they do.
That's, you just hit on something that just resonated, because if you ever go into a doctor because you have pain, for example, they want you to describe your pain on a scale, on a scale of 1 to 10. What is your pain like today? What was it like this last month? And you got to tick these boxes. But heaven forbid if your pain is a little bit better, because then it's like, oh, you're done. Your pain today is a 3. You're doing good. And it's like, wait, what happens when my pain gets to a 0? Can't we get to the point where there's no pain? Why are we settling for, you're just okay? And that's what you're going after. You're basically saying, hey, we can and we should be doing better. I'm curious, can we talk a little bit about the supplement world? Because there's a lot of supplements that are out there that are helpful to people. Are they useful, or do you think maybe they're just some kind of profit-making scheme?
They can be helpful. I mean, I have patients who try different supplements for their sleep. CBD is big now. THC has been big for a while. But, melatonin, kava, GABA, St. John's wort, SAMe. So there's a lot of different things that help to, let's say, boost serotonin, boost GABA, so they can help. There's no question they can help. Do they have the power and the punch of psychotropics? No, not even a chance. But as far as, some people who have just a very mild imbalances, that's all they need, and that's fine, that's great. those are the patients probably not seeing me because they're doing okay, or maybe they're doing okay. They could do a lot better, but they don't know that, and they're satisfied with where they're at. But see, the theory there is that, and this is a very common misconception, is that there's a lack of serotonin, for example. It's not a lack; it's an imbalance. And so when you add serotonin with using serotonin supplements, you're boosting the serotonin levels, but that can help a little bit temporarily, but you're not fixing the problem. And then psychotropics actually fix the problem, not just adding more of something you already have enough of. So yeah, some of these things can help temporarily. Some of them help very well, and some people kind of waste their time and money. So it really depends on the person. I mean, probably the most common thing I'm thinking about is things for sleep. There are some really good herbal supplements that can really help for sleep. As far as otherwise, overall mood, plus minus.
Okay. I do like to geek out on the science, and you started talking about serotonin and the receptors and stuff. Would you mind explaining just a little bit the science behind what is going on? What's happening with serotonin and dopamine and our receptors? What is it that you're specifically addressing?
Yeah, so in so many words, so the nervous system is composed of over 100 billion nerve cells connecting and passing chemicals from one cell to the next around the body about 1,000 times a second. And the connection between the cells, we call the synapse, there's over 100 trillion in the body. So basically, there's four chemicals I focus on: serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, and GABA. So the simple way of explaining is that these chemicals each have their little holes, or what we call receptor sites, that the chemicals are passing from one cell to the next. Those should be going constantly in a one-way direction, all four of them. If one or more, as often as two or three or four, are going the wrong direction, that's where the problem is. Now, why? So basically, it's a leakage problem. So the chemicals are leaking the wrong direction when those receptors should be a one-way receptors, then they become two-way. So that's where the problem is. And then, so what medications are doing is, and I'm able to figure out which chemicals it is by taking a good history and talking to people. They actually attach to those sites that I'm targeting, and they force the chemical to reconnect. So they basically fix the leaks on the cell membrane, and that's why when I'm saying holistic, it's helping the body to heal itself. And then the reason those leaks happen, there's three main ones. The biggest one is genetics, is that these things run in families. The second thing is hormonal changes can cause it, like puberty, like menopause, like postpartum. So hormonal changes can definitely cause that to happen. And major stressors, life stressors, trauma, PTSD, things like that can also throw things out of whack. So that's basically all they do. All they are doing is restoring the chemical balance. And if those chemicals, by the way, aren't out of balance, the medications don't work. So they only work in a sense if I'm addressing the specific problem. And this is kind of the controversy, is people asking, well, what's the test? Can't you do blood tests? Can't you do a scan? Can't you do something? No, there's no test. The test is actually me trying something, and if it works, then I'm right. If it doesn't work, I have to relook at it and say, okay, well, maybe it's this chemical, not that chemical. So it's basically, that's the whole process of the Corona protocol, is to try to nail down exactly where those imbalances are occurring, and specifically fix those imbalances right at the source of the problem.
Now, I want to talk to you about your methodology and the patient journey, like you're touching on. But I want to backtrack just a little bit, because you mentioned hormonal imbalances in different stages of life. And we talk about puberty, menopause. And a lot of times we hear about women, and women tend to be more forthright, I think, when it comes to mental health and stress. And they will talk about it. They will come to you. Men's health, men on the other hand, can we discuss men? Because mental health particularly can be stigmatizing among men. How is it that you might be addressing the men in our world?
Sometimes they have to be forced to come in by their spouses, by their kids, sometimes they come in reluctantly. I mean, some guys, come in, they really want the help, but it's different. The difference is that kind of male, you got to be macho. You can't complain about things. Can't show signs of weakness. I think women understand that they're not in control of things. I think women get more of a sense of that. Women are more communicative, and they understand more that there's something wrong going on in my body. And women have more hormonal imbalances than men do in over a lifetime. So I think that with men, that's the biggest challenge, is to get them to understand that, hey, treating this is not a weakness. This is something, and this is a medical problem. This is not a psychological problem. I mean, there's psychological components, but this is not, by and large, a psychological problem. It's a medical problem. It's a chemical problem. This is treatable. And so, and in men, it also often comes out differently, maybe not quite as emotional, but more with anger, irritability. So that's a lot of times. I mean, we're going to see that with women too, but more with men when it comes out. Men don't cry as much. We don't express emotion in that way as much. And so I think that's why, and I see a lot of people with PTSD from the Vietnam War and other wars. And some of them are very, even after feeling terrible for 50 years, they're still very reluctant to treat it because of that soldier's mentality that, you can't, it's, again, I'm a soldier. What I saw and experienced, that was my job. I don't want to take anything because that's just, so that's an example of often a more severe cases with PTSD of an older person.
Yeah. Can we segue back into that patient journey? When somebody comes to you, I know that you talk to them about their family history and you try different things. What is it? How do they typically find you? And what do you feel is the thing that keeps them coming back to you?
Well, they find me typically it's word of mouth. Most of the time, probably referral from another person. So person-to-person referral. Some a lot of referrals from psychologists in the area that know me. Some of them find me by, finding my website, Googling and looking up the doctors in the area, and then they find me that way. And, I think what keeps people coming back is the results they're getting, and I explain basically it's a process. Look, if I don't get it right the first time, that doesn't mean I'm not going to figure it out. I'll figure it out pretty quickly. But I think it's the personalized care. I think I spend a good amount of time with people, like an hour for a new patient, and really get into the depths of their history, their family history, everything they've gone through. So I take a very in-depth history. And then the personal touch, meaning that I return every phone call same day. Now, this is very unusual in medicine, is that you actually return phone calls, and that shows people that I care, and because I do. But I return every phone call every day, every email same day. I encourage every new patient to call me a week later without an appointment, just to call me and let me know how the first week goes, because I can tell in the first week of treatment if it's going in the right direction or not. And that way, right away, if it's not going in the right direction the first week, I stop that. I tell them, okay, let's try this instead before I see you a week or two after that. So I'm basically, always trying to be on top of things. And also I work very quickly. I think in psychiatry, everything is very slow. Everything takes months and months, and try this and increase the dose. The Corona protocol approach is very aggressive. I titrate quickly. Because I can tell very quickly when something's working, when a dose needs adjusting. I can tell that stuff. And so when I get people better, it doesn't usually take me more than about 2 to 3 visits. Wow. So basically, most people I get to remission within a month to 2 to 3 at the very most. And so my working quickly, getting results, and explaining everything. The other thing doctors often don't do is they don't explain what they're doing. Oh, here, just take this prescription. I'll see you in that. Well, wait, what's the prescription? What is this doing? I specifically draw diagrams. I say, okay, here's what I'm thinking. Here's what this medication does. And so I think with explaining and the personal touch, I think that's what gets people coming back.
That's amazing. And I know from talking to you and from reading your book and just understanding your whole methodology that you are carrying a very different mindset from most doctors and physicians and healthcare providers who are out there. What is it, Dr. Corona, that you learned about yourself while writing your book?
Well, what really got me writing, starting over 20 years ago, was just my desire to change things. I was seeing that, things are not going well in this field. I need to speak up about this because I'm not seeing things change. And so that's why when I first started writing in about 2002, 2003, I set out to say, okay, I need to spread the word about this. I want things to change. And so what's kept me writing since then is the desire to change things. I think still, even to this day, I'm frustrated by the lack of progress in this field. And that's why I'm hoping this book is going to change that. And so that's what's kept me going over the years, is that desire to help people, that desire to help other providers help their patients, because I know I can only see so many people and help so many people. That's why I've kind of written, and also the books I'm also very excited about coming out next year or so is my training manuals. So to teach doctors and other providers how to do this, that to me is going to be very exciting, because because that in that way I can make a bigger change by helping them help other patients. And so that's what's driven me, is that, my love for seeing people getting better, my love for people in general. I think why I became a doctor is because I want to help people. And like I said, there's no way I can think of it rather than this area of medicine where more people can be helped than any other field by far.
Yeah. You're really hitting so many different things at the core. And like you said, helping the healthcare providers. Your book is not just, and your future books are obviously going to be helping them. But your current book is definitely not just for them, but for the public as well. So people can really understand your protocol and see that help is out there, and understand through other people's stories or amalgamations of other stories that they can find the answers that they might be looking for through the Corona protocol. Dr. Corona, can you tell folks where they can go to learn more about you and your book? Give us your website and your details.
So my website is www.drpaul, so DR for doctor, Dr. Paul Corona, MD, like medical doctor.com. And on my website, I have a lot of things going on there. I have blogs. I've got, my books are available. My first 3 books are available to order there. I think most of my podcasts are on there too, and my podcast is the Dr. Paul Show, and so that's where I think and that's where the forms are. So if someone wants to look at the form that I have patients fill out before they actually see me, people can see like what kind of information I'm looking for, which is a lot. The form's long, but that's the form that I have every patient fill out, and that way I can read through that and get a lot of information going into a visit, which gives me kind of a head start. But my website's probably the best way. And then, my office, you can always call my office, 949-481-0118. So that's the best way to get hold of me.
Dr. Paul Corona, thank you so much for being with us today on the Books That Make You show. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Deborah. I appreciate it.
You bet. And thank everybody for joining us as well. And you can find out more about us on our website. It's booksthatmakeyou.com. You can also follow on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and we're on YouTube. Make sure that you subscribe, ring the bell, get notifications. Also, don't forget to sign up for our Webby award-winning newsletter so you never miss out on news, interviews, articles, and all of the bookish fun that we bring to you each and every day. Until next time, all of my bookish buddies, please enjoy all of the books that make you exactly who you are.
The host and executive producer of the Books That Make You show is Desiree Duffy. Sound mastering and engineering by Dave Napox. Social media and content promotion by Siddhi Jahagirdar. Copywriting and editing by Mike Robinson. The Books That Make You show is an award-winning podcast produced by Black Chateau Enterprises.